Today, we're unraveling the absolutely fascinating and honestly incredibly high-stakes reality of the North River tunnels. If you've ever taken a train in or out of New York City, you've relied on this heavily trafficked lifeline connecting Manhattan to the mainland. But right now, beneath the murky waters of the Hudson River, there's a silent crisis unfolding, and it literally threatens the economic engine of the United States. We're starting off with a massive, almost unthinkable problem. These doomed tunnels are literally falling apart. As the single rail connection between Manhattan's Penn Station and mainland New Jersey, they are the most trafficked rail tunnels in North America. Which brings us to the big question. What actually happens when Manhattan's only link dies? Well, it threatens to cut off the wealthiest city in the world indefinitely. We're not talking about a minor delay here. It's a full-blown existential threat to global commerce. Moving into Section 1, a doomed choke point. Now, if you enjoy what our source brilliantly calls the neurodivergent pleasure of passenger rail, you probably know these tunnels inside and out. You know that exact rumble as the train dips beneath the river. But here's the catch. A decade ago, experts sounded a massive alarm, warning that these tunnels only had about 20 years of life left. Do the math on that 20-year timeline and you realize, yikes, there really isn't much time left on the clock. We are taking dangerously close to zero. Which brings us to Section 2. New York's enemy, salt. To really understand how we got into this terrifying mess, we actually have to travel back to 2012. You remember Hurricane Sandy, right? Well, during that historic storm, the mighty Hudson River completely overflowed, pushing a staggering 13 million gallons of seawater inland. To picture just how much water that is, imagine the nearby train yards acting as a giant unavoidable drain, funneling all of that corrosive seawater straight down into the North River tunnels. They were completely submerged. Now, the water was pumped out pretty quickly once the storm passed, but it left something sinister behind. Our source material very accurately and kind of hilariously refers to them as little bastards. We're talking about two microscopic chemicals, chlorides and sulfates. And right now, they are executing a highly coordinated, relentless attack on the fundamental infrastructure of those tunnel walls. Just look at how this breaks down. These chemicals essentially act as a microscopic demolition crew. On one side, you've got sulfates. They have this nasty habit of expanding when they come into contact with water ground, which exerts immense pressure from the inside to just crack and shatter the concrete. Meanwhile, on the other side, chlorides seep right through those newly formed cracks. They attack the iron rebar inside, causing it to rust out and completely disintegrate. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that the tunnel is essentially eating itself into non-existence. The structural integrity is just vanishing, and it is entirely because of those 14-year-old salt deposits left over from Hurricane Sandy. I mean, it sounds like a comic book plot, but New York City's greatest enemy right now isn't the Joker or some supervillain. It's literally microscopic sea salt. Let's jump to Section 3, the icicle-smashing trains. Because of these little villains slowly digesting the tunnel walls, the daily reality of keeping these tunnels open is, well, shockingly primitive. It honestly borders on the absurd. Our source perfectly describes the required maintenance as completely mega busted. It takes a level of frantic, constant intervention that you would absolutely never expect for a modern, world-class piece of transportation infrastructure. Seriously, every single night, this unbelievable 3-step routine has to unfold just to see if the tunnel is good for another 24 hours. Step 1. A crew of 20 to 30 people marches into the damp darkness to inspect the walls top to bottom. Step 2. They are quite literally looking for chunks of concrete that have fallen right onto the tracks. And Step 3, which sounds totally fake, but I promise you is 100% real, they launch empty trains down the tracks like giant bowling balls. You're probably wondering, why empty trains? Well, during winter, all that structural damage causes water to leak through the ceiling. This forms massive icicles that threaten to short-circuit the electrical systems and tear down the catenary wires that power the trains. If those wires snap, the whole system just dies. So Amtrak is actually forced to send empty trains barreling through the tunnels at high speeds, specifically to smash the icicles off the ceiling before they can cause an electrical explosion. It's such a stark and, honestly, incredible juxtaposition. We are relying on primitive smash-and-grab train tactics, literally using multi-million-dollar trains as battering rams against ice, just to keep the global financial capital moving. Think about that for a second. This is actually how we are forced to maintain infrastructure in the wealthiest city in the entire world. Crazy, right? Moving on to Section 4, a $16 billion race.
With the concrete crumbling and trains playing demolition derby with icicles every night, a massive financial gamble is really the only way to save the network. The big hope here lies in the Gateway program. It's an awe-inspiring $16 billion project to dig an entirely new 9-mile tunnel from Penn Station over to Secaucus, New Jersey. This program is going to double the number of tracks, but most importantly, it will finally allow Amtrak to shut down those old crumbling tunnels long enough to scrub out those 14-year-old salt deposits before the whole thing collapses.
Now let's look at the timeline, because the margin of error here is truly terrifying. Walk through this with me. We start in 2012 when Sandy hits. We move to today, where we've got our mega-busted nightly icicle smashing maintenance. Then look all the way at the end. If everything goes flawlessly, the new Gateway Tunnel opens in 2035. But do you remember that 20-year countdown from experts a decade ago? That predicts the old tunnels will go completely kaput in 2036. That is a margin of error of exactly 1 single year before the old tunnels become completely unusable.
And let's be real for a second, since this is literally the most expensive infrastructure project in America, the chances of there being absolutely zero delays are, well, incredibly slim. Our source notes with a nice hit of cynical realism that, as usual, bureaucracy wins again. A single year is practically no margin of error at all for a mega project like this, giving us a true nail-biting countdown to 2035. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. With a 1-year margin of error, are we just watching a disaster unfold in slow motion? It really forces us to confront the extreme fragility of the unseen infrastructure that we rely on every single day. The next time you ride the rails into the city, you might just find yourself thinking about those little bastards in the walls.